In November 1956, the most powerful empire in human history, one that ruled a quarter of the earth and dominated global trade for over a century, was brought to its knees in just 11 days. It was not defeated by a rival military or a bloody revolution, but by a single phone call threatening to collapse its currency. Within hours, the British Empire surrendered to its own debt, realizing it was no longer the superpower it claimed to be. That moment, known as the Suez Crisis, was the final nail in the coffin of British dominance. But what history books conveniently leave out is that Britain fell because it had been making the exact same mistakes that America is making right now. By 2026, those exact same mistakes may finally catch up with the United States. To understand how this collapse happens, you have to look at the peak. In the 19th century, the British pound was the undisputed currency of the world, giving Britain the almost supernatural power to print money, fund its military, and run massive trade deficits because everyone needed their currency. But as the late 1800s approached, the United States was already outpacing British factories, innovation, and wealth. Britain's currency only remained dominant because of economic inertia. The world was simply used to using the pound. World War I transformed Britain from the world's largest creditor into one of its largest debtors, owing massive sums, especially to the United States. Instead of adjusting to this new reality, British leaders made a fatal blunder in 1925 by returning to the gold standard at the pre-war exchange rate, driven by pure ego and denial. To maintain this artificially high currency value, they kept interest rates painfully high, which strangled economic growth and spiked unemployment. Yet they kept spending as if they still ruled the world, funding a global military presence and an empire they could no longer afford. During the Great Depression in 1931, Britain was forced off the gold standard entirely, and the pound lost nearly 30% of its value almost overnight. And it only survived as a reserve currency because Britain essentially held its colonies hostage, forcing places like India and Australia to hold their reserves in pounds. The United States is currently following this exact same playbook, not just a similar one, but the exact one. America maintains the illusion of power by forcing the world to hold American currency through the petrodollar system, where oil is priced exclusively in dollars. But just as colonies eventually gained independence, oil-producing nations are getting tired of American foreign policy, with countries like China and Russia now trading in their own currencies, and BRICS nations actively building alternative payment systems. America's debt-to-GDP ratio is approaching 120% and climbing rapidly, adding over $2 trillion to the national debt in just 1 year, borrowing $7 billion every single day just to keep the government running. Like Britain, which bankrupted itself after World War II, but refused to downsize its global presence, America currently spends more on its military than the next 9 countries combined, policing the globe with a credit card. Britain's final collapse came suddenly during the 1956 Suez Crisis, when it tried to retake the nationalized Suez Canal through military force alongside France and Israel. The United States, infuriated by this old-fashioned colonialism, threatened to dump its holdings of British pounds and block Britain's emergency IMF loan. Draining foreign currency reserves at over $100 million per week and days away from complete financial catastrophe, Britain was forced to order a ceasefire and withdraw. The empire had been brought to heel by its own creditor. America's own Suez moment is rapidly approaching. It could be a failed military intervention, a congressional debt ceiling crisis, or a geopolitical shock where targeted nations refuse to comply with financial sanctions because they no longer need the American banking system. The numbers for 2026 show that interest payments on the U.S. national debt will exceed $1 trillion annually, costing more than the entire defense budget or Medicare. When a reserve currency falls, it brings devastation to ordinary citizens. When the pound collapsed, British citizens watched their savings evaporate, the cost of imports skyrocket, and jobs disappear. If the dollar loses its reserve status, everything Americans import will cost dramatically more. Interest rates on mortgages and credit cards will spike, and the comfortable middle-class lifestyle will become a memory. Britain's transition from apparent strength to obvious weakness took about 30 years, but the final collapse took less than 2 weeks. America's foundation has been weakening for 50 years, running constant trade deficits since 1975 and accumulating accelerating debt since 2008, meaning the eventual collapse will likely be even more sudden. History does not repeat, but it rhymes, and right now, the rhyme between Britain then and America now is almost perfect. The most dangerous phrase in finance is believing this time is different. Prepare yourself by paying attention to the warning signs, diversifying your assets, and building real skills because the government will not save you. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, please hit that subscribe button. Follow for more deep dives into the economic forces shaping our world. And try encouraging viewers of your post to share it with their friends so they can prepare for what is coming.